Hi there, it's Lerald, and Brewmaster's received a few changes recently that will have a pretty important impact on how they're going to work in BFA, so let's take a look. The first and best change is that the stagger rate for spell damage is now up to 35% of the base stagger percentage. This is a good buff that will help make Brewmasters less vulnerable to spell damage. It's good. Unfortunately, Brewmasters are also losing 10% of their base health. This counteracts the buff to staggering spell damage a bit, but it's mostly about tuning monks to not be so much stronger than other tanks when it comes to taking huge amounts of physical damage. If Blizzard feels like this was a mistake or just, they went a little too far, it's a pretty easy change to revert. Give monks back 5 or 10% health, boom. As a silver lining, because Gift of the Ox spawn rates are based on your health pool, losing 10% health will increase the rate of Gift of the Ox orbs by about 10%. Also on the subject of Gift of the Ox, the healing of Gift of the Ox orbs is being increased by 30% as well. These are a couple of nice little buffs to Brewmaster's self-healing that will take them from very limited and unreliable self-healing to fairly limited and unreliable self-healing. Finally, the duration of Iron Skin Brew has been increased to 7 seconds, and the shared brew cooldown was decreased by another 2 seconds, down to 14. This is going to significantly increase the availability of Purifying Brew, and reinforces the idea that Brewmasters actively mitigate damage, rather than just maintaining Iron Skin Brew and relying on the healer to keep you alive. This is a really good change that will make Brewmaster feel a lot more powerful and engaging. And drinking of a brew every 6 seconds, so really drunk. Now let's look at talents, where there have been some big changes. The first 2 rows are the same, they're still good. Chi Wave could go, but that's about it. In the third row, light brewing is unchanged, but the buffs to base brew recharge time have made this talent a much better option. It's still not better than Black Ox Brew, so it's probably not going to be worth taking, but it's something. Spitfire is a new talent replacing Gift of the Mists, which was kind of a boring, complicated, not that great talent anyways. Unfortunately, Spitfire is a simple, kind of boring, not great talent too. It has the potential to be good, but at its current tuning it takes Tiger Palm, a spell that deals very little damage and has pretty small defensive value, and gives it a chance to reset Breath of Fire, a spell that deals very little damage and has pretty small defensive value. Now that Breath of Fire no longer grants stacks of mastery in BFA, it's just not a great defensive keybind. It fills a gap in your rotation, and it's worth 5% damage reduction to put the debuff up, but it's active 80% of the time without Spitfire anyways. This talent's worth, at best, 1% damage reduction. If the procced Breath of Fire generated elusive brawler stacks, or dealt a bunch of extra damage, or refunded the cost of Tiger Palm, this might be a good talent. If Spitfire was a guaranteed Breath of Fire reset when you cast Keg Smash, it would be a much more interesting talent. It probably still wouldn't be better than Black Ox Brew, which is part of the problem. This talent really should be in Tier 1 in place of Chi Wave, or in Tier 7 in place of Guard. Right here it's just a kind of a bummer. And it also doesn't play well with Blackout Combo. Because you're trying to fish for Breath of Fire resets with Tiger Palms, Blackout Combo has some rotational interference as well, so these two talents really don't play well with each other, and it would make sense if they were on the same tier, and balanced to be competitive with each other. Black Ox Brew was also nerfed slightly. Its cooldown is up from 90 seconds to 2 minutes. This change is mostly about balancing the excellent baseline buffs to brew generation by not letting Black Ox Brew give you too many brews, and it probably won't have much effect if you run the standard talent setup and the usual 14%-ish haste. The 4th tier is all the same, it's still good, and the 5th tier has one new talent, Bob and Weave. It was added a little while earlier than everything else in this video, and it's just the legendary ring Jewel of the Lost Abbey. This is a great bonus, and it stretches the duration of stagger out by 30%, which means your staggers are going to tick for 30% less damage at a time. It's really good. It replaces Mystic Vitality, which was a good talent during Legion, but with the reductions to spell stagger percentage in BFA, it had become a lot less valuable. This tier looks like it's going to be a simple choice. Do you need a defensive cooldown? Take Dampen Harm. Do you need self-healing? Take Healing Elixir. Do you need to just be tankier all the time? Bob and Weave. Dampen Harm or Bob and Weave will probably be the 2 choices you'll want to use during raids, depending on fight specifics. Healing Elixir seems like a pretty obvious choice for soloing, maybe Mythic Dungeons. And Bob and Weave, probably any spots in Mythic Dungeons where you're not taking Healing Elixir. The 6th tier is still the same, and in the 7th tier, it's the thing Brewmasters have been asking for since the Legion pre-patch. Guard is back. Only it's not Guard. It's got the same name, icon, and cooldown, but it's nothing like Guard. First off, this new talented Guard is a shield that absorbs incoming stagger damage. This means it only affects spell damage at 35% of how much it affects physical damage, because that's how stagger works now. This also means that if you have stagger damage on you already, that damage is going to keep ticking away. That's actually a good thing. It kind of allows you to get several free purifies while you're preventing damage coming in. It's just kind of weird. It absorbs stagger damage up to 750% of your AP. Unfortunately, that's not great, since gear scaling after the BFA item level squish means it'll be an absorb shield worth about 37% of your health. Attack power and health will scale at pretty comparable levels throughout the expansion, so it really won't get proportionally much stronger as you gear up. Stagger is calculated as a percentage of your health. Heavy stagger means you're ticking for more than 6% of your health per second. The amount of time a monk spends in heavy stagger can vary wildly based on the fight, from anywhere as low as like 5% on a fight like Varimathras all the way up to over 30% on a fight like Agrimar. But that really doesn't matter all that much. When you want a defensive cooldown like Guard, it's because you're taking a lot of damage. If you're taking a lot of damage, you're probably in heavy stagger. Since Guard absorbs around 37% of your health in staggered damage, it's going to be consumed in 6 seconds. Unfortunately, there's already a talent in this tier that gives you 3 seconds of stagger pausing on a shorter cooldown, and much more Blackout Combo. If you're really not concerned with maximizing your damage output with Blackout Combo, which is pretty much the advantage it has over Guard, Guard just really isn't a better option than High Tolerance for reducing your damage over the course of a fight either. High Tolerance makes you 10% more resilient at all times, on top of 10 to 15% extra haste, which means it's not just better for newer players who are getting started and feel like they need some training wheels. It's better for the absolute highest tier players who are desperately trying to scratch and claw their way through world first kills while they're insanely undergeared. Guard has just had its absorb value increased, so I think it's reasonable to assume that this is probably right where Blizzard wants it, at least for now. Unfortunately, they buffed it up just to the point where it could be worth using if you're really desperate for defensive cooldowns, but not so much that it's really ever going to win out over High Tolerance or Blackout Combo in the course of the majority of encounters. Oh, also, Guard's on the global cooldown, because of course it is. The best thing Blizzard can do with Guard is either to make it work like the old version of Guard, where it's just a normal, huge absorb shield that's really useful against spell damage, or to take it and move it up to the tier with Healing Elixir and Dampen Harm. That would mean getting rid of the boring but effective Bob and Weave, or making Healing Elixir baseline, which I would love, but it would still be a competitive talent in its current form up there. Imagine choosing between a 30-second kind of weird absorb shield that's somewhat useful or Dampen Harm. I think there's situations where you'd want either of those. I still have nostalgia for Guard, but Brewmasters worked extremely well without it during Legion, and at least in this current incarnation, they're going to keep working well without really using it in BFA. So now that I feel like I just ruined Christmas by saying Guard is bad, here's good news. The base class is looking the best it has this entire beta. And while Spitfire and Guard are disappointing right now, Blizzard seems like they realize that, and there's good reason to hope we'll see buffs to them or movement in the talent tree that could make them into a lot more competitive options. In terms of what talents I think you're going to take, nothing's really changed, but just for the sake of feeling complete here, here's the talent setup I would run while playing a Brewmaster. Well, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions about Brewmaster Monk, ask away. I will be covering other beta updates and putting together more videos soon as we start to roll toward BFA launch, so stay tuned for more great BFA Beta content, and as always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.